Greetings, I'm Solidus-Skully, and welcome back to Devil May Cry 2 as we face off against yet another boss, the Noctpteran. And unfortunately, this is another boss in the ilk of na you can't hit me, because I have wings and you don't. As you can see, it's just out of range of Lucia's, melee attacks, so we'll pretty much have to rely on Divine Anger to take out a fuckload of its health. And, we might think that we've won the day just far, but no. As a bit of a final insult, the boss is in fact not the Noctpteran, which would have been a reasonably decent boss fight in and of itself. But instead we have to defeat its larvae that have a habit of swallowing you, reproducing, and basically just making life generally miserable for everybody. Again, your best bet in destroying them is mainly just either laying down a few cranky bombs to pretty much take them out and stunlock them, or, well, just dodging out the way, trying to slash where you can, and sort of avoid them pipping you, or worse yet, eating you, draining a fair bit of your health, and generally just making life miserable. Porterat demonstratum. And, I believe if they do eat you and spit you out, then, they do explode and die, but that also means that, well, yeah, you basically gotta go back and kill them again. At least I think, because, I think if you get either way, it's just irritable, and again, Devil May Cry 2 does still have a lot of the same sort of item, ranking mechanics as the previous game. Again, you have item penalties if you use, like, a Vital Star or whatever, so, taking damage using items is, considered very no bueno. And, as a result, you're just gonna be in for a wee bit of a shit time. But yeah, it's one of the few places where the cranky bomb really has any real use, so, yeah. You're not really gonna be using it anywhere else, so I guess against enemies like these, it's really the only place you're gonna use them. But yeah, as we traverse around this rather ambient theme that's gonna be used for a level to come, we're gonna enjoy this little underground area and just sort of enjoy the Noctpteran for what it's worth. Did actually have a cameo in the Devil May Cry 2007 anime, if I remember correctly.
I was created? That's why I have this ability. Someday I'll attack humans. I have to go.
Yeah, so I suppose if we can tackle lingering plot threads as we have them right now. Yeah, Lucia being part demon. That much was obvious, but her being an artificial creation of Arius is definitely one that's gonna leave you, well, I'm not going to say it's necessarily going to leave you cold, but it does come across as very underdeveloped, mainly by proxy of the fact that the game pretty much needed to be released yesterday with only 6 months of development to really get the game ready, but yeah, needless to say, I feel like it does borrow a fair few elements from what was intended to be in Resident Evil 4, and again, as I did, jokingly title the last part, how you meant to say that I was manufactured. In reference to that one scene between Wesker and Oswald Spencer of Resident Evil 5 Lost in Nightmares. Yeah, I do think that was the whole sort of scene that was meant to go down between Tony Redgrave and, Oswald Spencer in the Resident Evil 4. That was meant to be. But by that same token, though, yeah, we don't get quite as much development. I imagine in Resident Evil 4's case, we probably would have had a boss fight against, Tony and Albert Wesker, given the setting of the Nilo Angelo fight, and in turn, there's a very similar locale seem in Resident Evil 5, but yeah, Lucia seems to be taking Dante's place, for lack of a better phrase, and it doesn't really highlight her angst in a lot of cases, because, the Devil May Cry series does sort of treat demons as a whole sort of like, again, the animalistic, that bestial, and, they do want to kill humans, eat their flesh, not even in the same vein as, like, what Mundus Saragasax really wants, to just, revert everything to hellscapes and consume it all. It's really just, a hierarchy of darkness gone mad. And to once again sort of illustrate classic Devil May Cry mythology, yeah, there is no god, there are no angels or Nephilim or anything, so yeah, demons and humans. That's all there is, and that's probably why the Dark Knight Sparda was as revered as he was. A demon who turned against his own kind out of love for humanity. Well, I suppose more specifically in this case being his wife and sons, but, he did, some good. But yeah, putting all that aside though, Lucia's arc isn't really handled as well as it otherwise could be. It is addressed, I mean, again, she does have scenes with Dante and, you know, her mother Mathieu to really sort of clear things up, but, yeah. I mean, again, they're trying to play the whole thing for drama of like, oh yes, Lucia, she trained you to be a soldier, tee-hee, huddle-ha, but... Well, I mean, again, you don't really get enough development between, you know, what the project was with Lucia, you know, how Argus X treated her beforehand, and, yeah, the contrast between, not Argus X, but Arius and how he treats his demons compared to everybody else. Yeah, all of it is basically the equivalent of tools to him. A lot of them don't have any autonomy of their own, and even the secretaries who, you know, do share a lot of Lucia's abilities, again, they're very much just tools to be used. They're very efficient in battle, but they have no personality beyond that. They exist to serve Arius's whims purely, and, yeah, I suppose that's why he considered Kai a defect, because Lucia did have a personality and, you know, an autonomous free will of her own. But, yeah, I suppose he just considered that a flaw and rejected her outright compared to Mathieu, who took advantage of that, nurtured her, cared for her, and fostered her talents to fight for the good of humanity. So yeah, a bit of a sad state of affairs, but Aquist, what are you gonna do when it comes to devils who decide to cry? Because tears are a thing only humans have. And to talk about underwater weapons that Lucia has, the Cranky Bomb is one of them, and the other of which being the crossbow, which you don't need to go into first-person mode to use anymore, but rather you can use very much in third-person, so yeah, swimming mechanics are marginally improved compared to DMC1, where it was a bit rigid in terms of how you controlled, but yeah. And speaking of weapons that were initially intended for Devil May Cry 1, but made it into 2, submachine guns, as well as, well, missile launchers, by which, yeah. So yeah, Devil May Cry 2 does get a few things of its own that were intended for the first game, among boss concepts and a few other tasty treats here and there. But yeah, those enemies are basically, again, destroy them, they launch little homing missiles to seek you out, and bada bing, you do the thing as we enter our next area. And thus, plot progression as we continue throughout the Ouroboros facility, this time as Mr. Dante Esquire, seeing new vistas beyond the horizons. Oh, the Ouroboros facility, filled with demons, stone tablets of ancient mystical power, lawnmowers outside. Yep, this facility's got everything. By the way, speaking of which, I do apologize if you hear lawn mowing in the background. Neighbors. Everybody needs good neighbors. Neighbors interrupt commentaries too. But yeah, putting all that aside though, Dante does have a markedly different pathway towards getting to Arius compared to anything else, so yeah, we can't access the electric generator room. So instead we pretty much need to, well, take a different pathway to follow Lucia all the way up to where Arius is. And to kind of talk about the design influences that played into Arius, first of all, there's Dante's most useless move, as you saw right there, the shield bash, where, again, you pretty much jump up and press the attack button while holding R1, and then he does that little, like, you know, shoulder push. It's fucking useless, lacks in range, should have been replaced by something different entirely, so, yeah. But in any case, to talk about Arius' design influences, yeah, obviously he was partially based on the Count Oswald Spencer, as was initially going to be in the Resident Evil 4 build of the game. But yeah, later he was eventually split off into two design influences, one that would later go into, you know, the Dark Knight Sparda in his human form, and eventually, Mundus. That would eventually be in his Ultra Tyrant form as you look into the Devil May Cry 1 concept art. But yeah, all that aside though, yeah, another influence for, you know, our main villain Arius was actually, the actor Lee Van Cleef. Particularly his appearance in the, you know, the Western film for a few dollars more, so... Yeah, those rather sharp, angular features, although, honestly, he kind of reminds me a little bit more of, you know, Heihachi Mishima from, Tekken. Although, then again, maybe they might have had partially the same design influence. But yeah, in any case, so, yeah, quite a nice mixture of design influences, and, one that, once again, does make the whole Lucia and, you know, Arius connection, well, much more Resident Evil as opposed to Devil May Cry, although, then again, the DMC series as a whole does have its whole, you know, fathers and sons sort of symbology, especially going forward in the series. Not that it handles it particularly well, mind you, because Devil May Cry 5 with certain spoilery elements with Virgil, oh boy, it's, yeah. And Nero got a really fucking rough deal, quite frankly, and, really, I think he let, his old man go far too easily compared to, you know, what anybody else would have forgiven him. But it's okay, the fanbase forgives Virgil because he's cool. You know, apparently. Yeah, parental abandonment. Oiven, Maven. But anyway, I mean, that's far from the worst thing the Devil May Cry series has ever done, so I guess I can't be too angry. But yeah, as we're continuing to make our way through this fair-feathered land of science experiments run amok, yeah, to talk about the game's voice actors, actually, for whatever bizarre reason, they're actually credited under special thanks, as opposed to their individual roles, which is strange, because again, in Devil May Cry 1 and 3 and every other game in the series, I think, yeah, like, I mean, Drew Coombs, Ruben Langton, or, you know, Johnny Young Bosch, I mean, even the ones from the first game, like, you know, Sarah LaFleur, or, you know, even the two kids who voiced young Dante and Virgil, yeah, they were credited in the main game as is, but yeah, the likes of Dante's voice actor Matt Kaminsky, Francois who voices Lucia, Flo de Ree who voices, you know, Mathieu, and probably the most well-known of the cast, Sherman Howard, they just get special thanks, even though they all voice like Dante, Lucia, Mathieu, and Arius respectively. I mean, I'm surprised Sherman Howard didn't get a voice credit, considering that, I mean, he was already a bit of an accomplished actor in his own right, and you know, he did come fresh off with voice acting talent with the likes of Batman Beyond, where he voiced, you know, the main villain of the first season, Blight, so, yeah, it's kind of strange that they did that. Oh, well, strangeness for another day, I suppose. You can't interact with that little Ouroboros tablet, but, yeah, given the whole theme of eternal life and promises made to many people who followed in the wake of Argus Sax the Chaos, yeah, he promised the people the divinity and prosperity, but instead brought them ruin. Yeah, again, another one of the shames of Devil May Cry 2, at least for me anyway, was that, again, given the gothic vibes and atmosphere, we don't really get to see as creepy an exploration as a lot of the demon lords as, we would eventually get later on in the series, because, I mean, it kind of goes from, oh, I don't want to say it goes for completely human antagonists, especially not in 5's case, but, it does go for more, well, I don't know, I mean, it just seems to go for less impactful villains, real. Well, I don't want to say less impactful either, I mean, again, I just want to say, okay, if I can just sort of get into it, I mean, I don't find Arkham's, you know, whole storyline in Devil May Cry 3 to be very engaging. I mean, again, in essence, you could argue that it was actually more of a rip-off of Devil May Cry 2's story, in the sense that, much like Arius, you know, Arkham just wanted Sparda's power. You know, then cut to Devil May Cry 4, where, you know, with Sanctus and his whole love of Sparda, he wants to be Sparda, and hence become the savior and kill all demonkind, yada yada yada, whatever, and only really cared about Nero because of that. And then, of course, Devil May Cry 5, you have, you know, the Demon Lord Urizen, who, through spoilery of spoileries, is basically a scared little boy who doesn't want to get hurt again, which, again, I don't want to say is necessarily weaker or better than anything else, but, you know, particularly because there is some series-wide build-up because of that, but, I don't know, the villains of the series never quite hit the same notes as Mundus or, you know, Argus Sax. I mean, Mundus in the sense of, you know, what he did to Dante's family, and in turn the power he wielded, and just how, well, honestly, just how bored of it all was, like, you know, fully reflecting the godhood, you know, Lucifer's status of, I have divine power, I am the best, and I want to be a divine being, but I'm just as much of a filthy demon as the rest of them, and in the case of, you know, Argus Sax the Chaos, it plays it up in a much more eldritch fashion, where again, it's, you know, all-consuming, and again, I think Arius kind of put it best in this game. Everything that belongs to the devils will eventually revert to its original form, so it puts a bit of a stake of inevitability in the whole, you know, demons coming to consume humanity and, you know, rising from the underworld to consume, you know, the physical human realm. So again, like, I mean, it does add a certain layer of, you know, again, if it wasn't for the fact that Dante and other demon hunters were in this world, humanity would be pretty screwed. But yeah, a lot of other villains just don't really tend to hit that same sort of mark, and I don't know, it's a bit of a shame really, but again, we haven't really had many other games, nor many other opportunities to see more villains in the series, so whatever really. I mean, all I'm really trying to say is my salient point. I can't say that, you know, having Demon Space Pope Sanctus and, you know, old bald man who turns into the Joker and fucking, you know, V's Nobody and Heartless plot really seem to be all that interesting, so, yeah. But then again, that's just sort of been my contention between, you know, classic Devil May Cry, which I seem to count as 1 and 2, compared to where the series would go from 3 onward, where it tended to lean more towards comedy game, as opposed to, you know, gothic horror, which, yeah. I mean, I think I've said my piece, and you've probably pieced together all throughout my time commentating all throughout these games, which, oh boy, the angry hate mail, the hate mail for if I ever end up covering DMC 3, or 4, or 5, or the reboot. I mean, I did technically cover the reboot, and nobody really gave a shit, so angry letters avoided. But, yeah, if I covered 3 through 5, I'd still enjoy them, but I'd be, whinging, I suppose. Trickster Moose, War Running. Because The Matrix was a big popular franchise at large and, largely influential to Devil May Cry's style, I suppose. Then again, it is also important to note that, again, a lot of Devil May Cry really came about because of, well, again, Tony Redgrave having T-Virus powers that were displayed in Code Veronica with, you know, some of Wesker's abilities in that game, particularly Code Veronica X that showcased Wesker War Running and retconned him getting his shit completely rocked by Alexia in the Dreamcast version, so... yeah, Tony Redgrave having Matrix powers, yeah. Eastern and Western media, working as one! But yeah, in any case, this does take place after Lucia entered the building, as you can tell with the evil heart powering this generator, and yes, indeedy, the door. She is locked. Alright, she is not locked. But that's pretty much leading towards plot. And yeah, there are actually also unlockable weapons to be found throughout the game, but wait a minute, Mr. Solidus-Skully, you sexy hunk of man-ass? Entering secret rooms and not going where you're saying that we're supposed to be going? Yes, head down into the fire pillars that do gradual pip damage to Dante, and you will see your reward, because something that wasn't there when Lucia was here. It does also go to show that it seems demonic rituals were being performed in tandem with science. Really creepy. The evil heart is extinguished. But yeah, this is where you get one of Dante's 2 swords. The door is closed tight. Yeah, so no cheaty cheat for us. But yeah, this is basically where we get to see Dante's, basically what's meant to be his power weapon, but yeah, this is... I'm trying to remember what it was called. The sword is called the Death Sentence, but it was based on a traditional African sword, so yeah, I'm just trying to remember what specific weapon it was based on, really. But yeah, in this game you also have Rebellion, a standard sword for Dante. So yeah, Force Edge was very much, you know... Force Edge was very much a memento to his father that Dante eventually gave to Trish, and I don't know, I guess the implication is that he sold off Alastor to, you know, pay for his fledgling Devil May Cry business. But, yeah, say goodbye to all of Dante's other weapons, and, yeah, Rebellion is very much a memento and a keepsake for Dante that he eventually uses to unlock his true power. And of course, they eventually retconned, you know, the Yamato sword that Sparda had in DMC 1 to eventually go to Virgil and unlock his true power. But, yeah, anyway, I mean, on top of being more of a comedy game, it is also where the series gradually began to get a little bit, well, Shonen and Dragon Ball Z for my taste, where it's like, oh no, I have to unlock extra power! And, you know, that's why you got the whole thing in Devil May Cry 5 where, you know, Rebellion turns into Demon Sword Dante and gets, like, a second form upgrade, and... yeah, just power boost, but oh no, Nero's ultimate power is the most... well, actually, the moment he unlocks his full Devil Trigger, really, it's the most powerful one of all, because he's more human. Your thumb, that's bullshit. But anyway, back down the Sonic Adventure 2 elevator we go, hopefully passing by Dr. Eggman on the way down. Yeah, not really too sure why they decided to have us fight those little bees as opposed to some enemies and, you know, a typical fighting game lift segment, which is kind of strange, really. I mean, developers of Power Stone Street Fighter thought that would have been a natural, curve, really, but, it is also putting me in mind of, the PS2 Ghost Rider game, actually, which had a similar you know, demons infesting like a military base kind of vibe about it. Although, then again, another similarity between Ghost Rider and what would have been in Devil May Cry 2, as you can see with a lot of Dante's motorcycle antics that seems to be promoted throughout the game, is in fact vehicle sections that were intended to be a part of the game, but alas, no dice. Kind of a shame, really. I do wonder how they would have played out in terms of like a gameplay functionality, but well, I guess we'll never know. I mean, I suppose it would go to dividends to explain why we have enemies such as tanks and, well, the assault chopper in the game. Maybe the infested chopper was meant to be part of like an escape sequence where we travel from, you know, the city area to, well, losing the chopper and then eventually heading towards, you know, the Ouroboros space that we see here. Thoughts for another day, I suppose, but either way, as soon as we're done raining the smackdown on, you know, these blood goats that gradually increase in rank and power, and that does actually, you know, play into the whole idea of the Goat Clan, actually. Again, they do gradually scale up in terms of their power, so yeah, it seems that, as a clan, they were rather loyal to Argosax the Chaos. Or at least that's what the implication seems to be, and then again, I'm sure a future Devil May Cry game, if they bring that back, will retcon it. Ish, probably. But yeah, let's bring back Rebellion, since it's, you know, a little bit better powered up at this stage. Man, that's putting me in the mood for a Subway sandwich. And that's kind of what I think whenever I hear the beeping, but then again, that might just be because I'm hungry. And by the way, that is the special attack of, you know, the Bound Terrors. Yeah, they'll pretty much, you know, they'll pretty much jump around, clap Dante into their inner cages, and sap a shitload of his health. It is actually something that also happens to, some of the shield enemies that pretty much use their little buzzsaw blades. When they throw it at you, you can actually use Dante's sword to take out the shield, and then they will lose that shield, and have only the one to throw at you. And again, if you take out both shields, then on the hard mode and the must die mode difficulty, they'll pretty much end up throwing their shield away at you, then pretty much grab Dante, drag him into their cage, and then drain his health. Again, honestly, why they didn't keep these additional enemy dynamics into the normal mode either is kind of a mystery to me. I guess, again, the game being unfinished, or I suppose maybe a possibility that they didn't have time to fully implement it. It's neither here nor there in this case. But anyway, this is very much entering the subway tracks that, well, yeah, the same subway tracks that Lucia travelled across rather illegally, where she fought those goatlings, so yeah, you can't exit the train till the end of the stop, so yeah, by the time we get to the end, it's pretty much the same sort of straight shoot all the way up to, you know, that elevator sequence that you've already seen as Lucia, so yeah, we're going to be doing a little bit of editing teleporting just as soon as the train comes to a stop. And Dante gets a Subway sandwich. Because God knowing the dude's hungry, he's unlikely to get a beer or strawberry sundae around here, so there we go.
Well, what have we here?
Do you have to ask?
Maybe another time.
And so we have our current boss of the now. This is the Furia Taurus, and on the hard mode is actually quite a bit of a threat. I mean, even on the normal mode, again, this boss does have a predilection of knocking you out of your shit, and I guess compared to Devil May Cry 1, one of the few aspects that this game does like that I am, you know, I am at least going to give a lot of fans their dues on, is that there's a lack of a blocking mechanic. Not that you could really block in Devil May Cry 1 either, but again, if you manage to hit your attack at the same time as your enemy, you could intercept it with your sword and pretty much deflect certain attacks back towards the enemy and, you know, pretty much hit it back towards them, sealed so Nilo Angelo, but yeah, a bit of a shame really. But yeah, what makes Furia Taurus rather powerful here is that, again, He hits hard, he plays hard. And he also has, this little tornado suction ability that when he isn't charging at you like the bull he is, well, he will pretty much end up, having a much greater rotational torque. That again pulls you in and, has a greater degree of hitting you with his flames. That once again move faster, separate quicker, and if you play the must-die mode, well, you're pretty much going to be screwed, dude. But yeah, that being said though, again, if you want to get up on this guy's grill, style ranking be damned, you can very much take him down fairly easily with a few, million stabs and, taking him down with your air raid, peppering him with a few bullets, and again, if you are going to go complete pussy mode on him, well, again, you can pretty much just attack him, build up your double trigger, and utilize Dante's, wrist chain guns to pretty much lay the smack down. That and also the theme is also quite snazzy as well, so overall, very enjoyable. I guess one last bit of trivia I do have to relay is that the Fury Taurus was actually based on the Brazen Bull, a bull-shaped oven where people were burned alive for demonic rituals. And if you will remember, actually, back in that, little smelting chamber earlier where we found all the demonic embryos and sacrifices, yeah, seems like they were breeding these Fury Tauruses inside the in vitro tubes, so, oh dear. But either way, it does also sort of go to show their level of loyalty towards, Arius and Ogrosax, and, yeah, I do believe the Balrog enemy from Devil May Cry 5 was implied to have, had some sort of a relationship to Fury Taurus, at least based on some of the enemy files from 5, or maybe that just might have been, a bit of, fan theorizing, but, at least, whatever, really. Yeah, it also breathes fire. Be on the lookout for that. It will be on the test, and it may show up later for future reference. But in any case, I'm Solidus-Skully, keep it new metal, and we're taking down this bull for good. Catch you next time.